My name is May Freeman, and I turned 30 this year. If you ask my family, they'd tell you that adulthood means stability, responsibility, and showing up for people no matter what. But if you looked closely, really looked, you'd see the truth they trained me to forget. I was raised to be useful, not loved. In my childhood home, the TV was always louder than our feelings. Baseball games, news anchors, commercials, they filled every silence so no one had to talk about anything real. My mom, Evelyn, believed in structure the way some people believe in religion. Dinner at 6, laundry by Thursday, church every Sunday. My dad, Robert, believed in quiet. As long as the Bengals were on, he didn't have to hear anything else. And then there was Sloane, my older sister, the family son. Everything revolved around her brightness, her moods, her needs. When Sloane wanted the living room for her middle school friends, my 8th birthday party was moved to the backyard. I remember standing in the July heat, holding a slice of melting cake, watching through the sliding door as she laughed with her friends. Mom poked her head out and said, "Be patient, honey. She's older. Let her have her moment." As if my birthday wasn't supposed to be mine. At 12, I won the school science fair. My homemade water filter, 2 plastic bottles, gravel, charcoal, sat on the kitchen counter waiting for applause. Mom came home carrying swatches of fabric. She glanced at the project for half a second. "That's nice, May. Help me pick curtains for Sloane's room." I learned early that quiet achievements don't matter in a loud house. What mattered was being useful, being agreeable, being the daughter who didn't take up space. By the time I reached high school, usefulness had become my identity. I remembered birthdays, fixed the Wi-Fi, cleaned up after Sloane's messes, helped Dad find his keys, even when they were in his pocket. After college, when I moved back home for a year to save money, Mom turned me into her personal assistant. Grocery runs, babysitting Sloane's kids, cooking, cleaning. "Family helps family," she said. What she meant was, May will handle it. Thanksgiving that year still sits in my stomach like a stone. Sloane showed up 3 hours late because her live stream ran long and Mom insisted we wait. When she finally arrived, Mom wrapped her in a hug so tight you'd think she'd survived a natural disaster. My plate was cold. I ate it anyway. Later that night, I watched Mom carefully wrap leftovers for Sloane to take home. "She's juggling a business and 2 little girls," she whispered, as though that explained why my accomplishments always took a back seat. Sometimes late at night, I'd lie in my childhood room and wonder, if I disappeared, how many days would pass before someone noticed? When I finally earned my first real promotion, senior clinical specialist, I decided to celebrate. I invited everyone to dinner. They came, but it wasn't about me. Mom and Sloane spent half the meal browsing apartments on Zillow. Dad asked for the check early because the game starts at 8. I smiled through it and paid the bill. I didn't realize I was buying their approval, buying silence, buying peace. Then came the day everything cracked, though quietly, invisibly, like a hairline fracture. It was early June. The heat outside shimmered like invisible fire. I stood in the kitchen pressing cherry pie crust into a glass dish. Sloane was live streaming shawls in front of her ring light. Mom chased the kids around the living room. Dad dozed in his recliner. I wiped my hands, took a breath, and said, "I got promoted. They're transferring me to Raleigh." No one looked up. Not Mom, not Dad, not Sloane. The only response was the baseball announcer shouting, "Strike 3!" I stared at the pie dish and thought, I could disappear right now and this house would sound exactly the same. That realization didn't hurt as much as it should have. Instead, something new flickered inside me. A tiny flame of recognition. A whisper. You don't have to stay invisible. 3 weeks later, I packed everything I owned into cardboard boxes. Turns out invisibility doesn't take up much space. I labeled each box, kitchen, books, office, because order was something I could still control. The night before I left, I texted our family group chat, officially moving tomorrow, starting the new position on the 15th. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. In the morning, I stopped checking. As I pulled out of the driveway, the sun rising over Ohio cornfields, an old Temptations song played on the radio, something about moving on. It felt fitting. Halfway through West Virginia, my phone buzzed. "Come home Saturday to watch the girls. Sloane has a sales event." That was the message. No good luck. No, I'm proud of you. Just instructions. I tossed the phone aside and kept driving. Raleigh felt different from the moment I arrived. warmer, softer, like my lungs could finally expand. My apartment was small, but full of sunlight. The first night, I ate takeout on the floor, surrounded by boxes. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for anyone to need something from me. Then came Mocha, a tiny poodle with two big eyes, rescued from the downtown shelter. She followed me everywhere, like she feared I'd disappear if she blinked. Maybe she saw something familiar in me. We fell into a rhythm, morning jogs, coffee from the same barista, long workdays filled with structure and competence. Slowly, the apartment became mine. Calming colors, clean shelves, a framed photo of the ocean from a solo trip. It was on one of Mocha's evening walks that I met Evan Carter. He was standing in the dog park, leash in hand, watching his beagle Benji dig imaginary trenches. Evan's smile was warm in a way that didn't demand anything. He didn't speak to fill silence. He spoke to connect. When I mentioned I worked in rehabilitation clinical devices, his eyes lit. "So we're in the same universe," he said. His company designed rehab equipment for stroke patients. For once, I wasn't the helper, the background piece. I was part of a conversation that wasn't about fixing someone's problem. Mocha and Benji became inseparable, and slowly, so did we. Dinners turned into weekends. Conversations turned into trust. With him, I didn't have to shrink myself. I didn't have to earn space. I simply existed, and he made room for me. For the first time, I thought, maybe this is what family is supposed to feel like. But past ghosts have a way of finding new doorsteps. One evening, my cousin Harper stopped by during her cross-country trip. She snapped a photo of my living room, sunlight spilling across the bookshelf, Mocha curled on the rug, and posted it with the caption, "At my cousin May's. She built a life worth admiring." I laughed when she showed me. But neither of us knew that a single picture would reopen every door I'd closed. By the next morning, relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years were messaging me, asking about my neighborhood, my salary, my furniture. And then Mom commented under Harper's post, "So proud of our May." That single word, "our," felt like a hand reaching into my new life without permission. And later that night, a message came through that made my stomach drop. "May, sweetheart, how have you been? We miss you. Can we visit?" I stared at the screen, my heart sinking. They didn't miss me. They missed what I could give them. And they were coming. The message from Mom sat on my screen long after midnight, glowing like a warning light. "May, sweetheart, how have you been? We miss you. Can we visit?" 2 years of silence, and she chose that night, after Harper's photo went semi-viral among our family, to suddenly rediscover maternal affection. I didn't reply. The next morning, I woke to 3 missed calls from Mom, one from Dad, and a text from Sloan. "Your place looks amazing. Must have cost a fortune." That was the real voice under the niceties. By noon, another message arrived. "We were just talking. We already booked flights. Saturday at noon. Can't wait to see you." They didn't ask if I was free. They didn't ask if I wanted them here. They simply announced their arrival, like my adulthood was just a phase they had kindly tolerated. When I told Evan, he didn't react with anger or irritation, only quiet steadiness. "Are you okay with that?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "They ignored me for years. And now suddenly they're flying here? It doesn't feel like a reunion. It feels like a mission." He squeezed my hand, then treat it like one. No surprises, no guilt tripping, just honesty. It sounded simple, it wasn't. Saturday came faster than I expected. I spent the morning cleaning, not because I wanted the place to impress them, but because I needed the space to feel like mine when they walked in with their noise and judgments. At 12:15 sharp, the doorbell rang. I let it chime twice before opening, a small rebellion that steadied my pulse. Mom swept in first, floral perfume hitting me like a memory I didn't want. She hugged me too tightly, whispering, "Oh, sweetheart, you look thin. Are you eating?" The kind of greeting that sounded like affection, but was really an inspection. Dad followed behind her, carrying a bakery box. "Brought your favorite," he said. It wasn't my favorite. It had never been my favorite, but he didn't know that. Then Sloan arrived, balancing her phone in one hand and her 2 daughters in the other. The girls ran past me without hello, immediately exploring cabinets and shelves like tiny hurricanes. Sloan glanced around, lips parted in a mix of envy and calculation. "Wow, this place is something. Your company must pay you really well." I forced a smile. "Tea's in the kitchen." Mom trailed her fingers across my granite countertop and pursed her lips. "Fancy. I didn't know your position came with this kind of salary." "It comes with hard work," I replied. Sloane laughed softly. Of course, I mean 6 figures, maybe more. I didn't answer. Instead, I arranged teacups on a tray, keeping my movements steady, even as my pulse flickered beneath my skin. We gathered in the living room. Dad immediately turned on the TV and found a baseball game. The familiar drone of announcers filled the room like static, loud enough to drown out any real conversation, just like my childhood. The girls climbed onto my couch and began jumping, cushions flying. No, I said gently but firmly. We don't jump on furniture in this house. Mom blinked at me, startled. They're just excited, May. I'm sure they are, but excitement doesn't have to break things. A strange silence fell for a heartbeat. My tone was calm, but it wasn't submissive. They didn't know what to do with that. Mom laughed nervously. Someone's gotten a little strict. Someone's gotten boundaries, I thought. The conversation drifted into shallow waters. Weather, work, the girls' new dance classes. But Sloane kept slipping in little questions like fishing hooks. So, your mortgage must be wild. Do you get bonuses? Does your company give stock options? Do you and Evan split bills, or... Her tone was light, but her eyes were sharp, calculating every answer I didn't give. Then her oldest daughter knocked over a vase. Water spilled across the coffee table and dripped onto my rug. I stood, grabbed a towel, and cleaned calmly. Accidents happen, I said, but please be careful. Mom's lips tightened. May, it's just a vase. It's respect, I said quietly. Her eyes flashed, offended. The room tightened, like the air before a thunderstorm. Dad yawned loudly, turning up the baseball volume. Sloane crossed her legs and folded her arms. You know, May, she said casually, not everyone gets to build a life like this. You should be grateful. I looked at her. Grateful for what? For stability, she said with a sweet smile. For success. For being in a position to help. The words hung in the air, heavy, rehearsed. Suddenly, all the glances between her and Mom over the last hour made sense. The way Sloane's knee bounced nervously. The way Mom kept clearing her throat. The way Dad pretended not to hear. They weren't here for a visit. They were here for something else. And they were warming up to it. After lunch, Mom folded her hands like she was preparing a speech. May, your sister's had a bit of bad luck lately. There it was. Sloane sighed dramatically, as though she'd practiced it. The boutique took a hit this quarter. Online sales dropped. My landlord raised rent out of nowhere. Total nightmare. That sounds tough, I said, my voice even. Sloane nodded, then softened her tone. It's just a rough patch. Nothing long-term. We just need a little help to bridge the gap. Mom leaned forward. You remember that retirement account Dad and I had? Well, I used a small portion to help Sloane start the shop. We didn't tell you because we didn't want you to worry. My stomach tightened. How small a portion? Mom hesitated. Dad turned the TV volume higher. Mom continued. Now, with interest and penalties, things are delicate. But Sloane's business could bounce back if she had some breathing room. Breathing room, I said, as in money. It's not like that, Mom said quickly. Just temporary assistance, family helping family. Sloane reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope, placing it deliberately on the table. I brought the paperwork, she said lightly. You just need to sign as a guarantor. The bank prefers someone with a stable salary. It's practically risk-free. My stomach dropped. You already printed the forms. It's standard procedure, she said. You wouldn't actually be paying anything unless something went wrong, which it won't. You mean if your boutique fails? I asked. It won't fail, she snapped. But you make more than all of us combined. This won't even dent your finances. Mom placed a hand on my knee. Your sister's under so much stress. Think of the girls. They deserve stability. There it was, the oldest weapon in their arsenal. Guilt sharpened into a knife. I inhaled slowly. You're asking me to risk my career for a business that's already sinking. That's dramatic, Sloane said. You work in healthcare, not finance. Actually, I said, standing, my company has strict ethics rules. If I sign financial documents for a private business and it fails, I go under compliance review. I could lose my license. They hadn't expected me to have facts. I walked to the counter, picked up my phone, and pulled up the email from my compliance officer. Here, I said, read it. Mom skimmed it, her face paling. Sloane glared. You're hiding behind paperwork, Sloane snapped. No, I said softly. I'm protecting the life I built while you burn through everyone else's safety nets. Dad finally murmured, eyes glued to the TV. You don't have to talk to your sister like that. I'm talking honestly, I replied. Something none of us has done in this family. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was electric. Dangerous. Old structures shifting. Mom straightened, voice sharp. We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. But you are asking, I said, after ignoring me for years, after treating me like help. Sloane scoffed. We were busy living our lives. Exactly, I whispered, and I was busy cleaning up after them. I picked up the envelope and handed it back to her. No. Sloane blinked. No what? No, I won't sign. No, you can't stay here while you figure things out. And no, I don't owe you my stability to fix your chaos. Mom's breath hitched. After everything we've done for you. After everything I've done for you, I said. Sloane's face twisted. You've changed. I had to. You never left room for the old me to breathe. They gathered their things in silence. Sloane's daughters clung to her legs. Dad turned off the TV. Mom stared at me like she didn't recognize me. The door shut with a soft click that echoed in my chest. Mocha climbed into my lap, trembling. I held her close. I wasn't shaking because I was scared. I was shaking because I was free. The next morning, just as I sat down with coffee, my phone buzzed. We're still in town. We want to talk. Before I could reply, the doorbell rang. They were back. The doorbell rang before I even finished reading Mom's message. The same sharp, insistent tone as yesterday, but heavier somehow. I stood there for a moment, coffee cooling in my hand, listening to the distant thud of Mocha's paws as she trotted toward the door. A part of me hoped it was a neighbor, a delivery, anyone else, but I knew better. When I opened the door, all three of them were standing there again. Mom, Dad, Sloane. The girls fidgeting behind them, rubbing their eyes. Mom held a plastic grocery bag in one hand, like some peace offering she hoped would rewrite the past 24 hours. We didn't want to leave things like that, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. We're family, May. Families talk. Dad followed, muttering something about the heat. Sloane trailed behind, her expression softer than yesterday, but in a way that felt rehearsed. I closed the door and leaned against it for a second, grounding myself. Mom set the grocery bag on the counter and pulled out a chocolate cake, the same one from yesterday, half-eaten, lid taped shut as if that somehow made it whole again. I thought we could start fresh, she said. I didn't respond. I simply sat down in the same armchair as yesterday. They took the same places, too. It felt like the encore of a play no one wanted to be in anymore. Sloane was the first to speak. I'm sorry for how everything went yesterday, she said, voice trembling at the edges. I didn't mean to upset you. I was just desperate. I stared at her, watching the way she twisted her fingers in her lap. How desperate? Her eyes flicked toward Mom, who nodded. The boutique is worse than I said, Sloane whispered. I owe $39,000. I signed a personal guarantee. If I default, they'll come after me and Mom. She used part of her retirement fund. I turned to Mom, her lips pressed together, eyes dropping to the cake box, like she expected answers from the frosting. I just wanted to help her get started, she said. You were always so independent, May. I thought she needed it more. The words landed like pebbles dropped into a deep well, quiet, but they echoed down for miles. They never thought I needed anything, and so they never offered anything. Dad cleared his throat, staring at his shoes. We just need a bridge, he said quietly. A few months, then everything would be back on track. You've all built your lives assuming I'd be the safety net, I said. You forgot I'm not made of springs. Mom inhaled sharply. Sloane's eyes glistened. The girls huddled behind their mother, sensing tension without understanding it. You're really going to let us drown? Sloane asked, voice breaking. Why not? I said. You've been swimming in circles for years. You call it drowning only when I stop holding you up. Mom flinched. May, that's cruel. No, I said softly. Cruel is raising 2 daughters and only seeing one. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the refrigerator hum felt too loud. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street. A couple walked by holding hands, laughing. For a moment, I envied their simplicity, their peace. I wanted that peace. I deserved it. Behind me, Sloane tried again, her voice small. We're not asking for everything. Just help until the next quarter. I could even stay here for a while. Save on rent. Something cold slid down my spine. I turned slowly, eyes narrowing. You already packed for that, didn't you? Her face froze. I didn't wait for her denial. I looked down the hallway, and there they were. 2 oversized suitcases, zipped, ready. You planned to stay here before I even said yes, I said. You didn't come for help. You came for territory. Sloane's cheeks reddened. You're being paranoid. Mom jumped to her defense. She's your sister, and that's why I can predict her patterns from a mile away. Sloane crossed her arms. We thought you'd reconsider. I did, I said, and the answer is still no. Mom's tears finally spilled, slow, heavy drops, the kind meant to soften resolve. If you don't help us, she whispered, we could lose everything. the house, the store. Maybe you should, I said. Maybe losing the wrong things is the only way to learn what's worth keeping. Her tears grew sharper, weaponized. After everything we did for you. You mean, I interrupted, after everything I did for you. Mom blinked. Dad shifted. Sloane stared. I kept going. Who wrapped Sloane's inventory while she went to parties? Who babysat the girls for free so she could live stream? Who fixed your printer, cooked your meals, cleaned your house, and never needed anything in return? You didn't raise a daughter, you raised a helper. You've become so cold, Sloane whispered. I looked at her directly. No, I became clear. And then something in me snapped, but not in anger, in certainty. I walked to the counter, picked up the manila envelope they had brought yesterday, laid it flat, and tore it neatly down the middle, then in half again and again. Each rip was soft, final, and terrifying to them. Mom gasped. Sloane stood abruptly. May. No, I said. You can't guilt me into saving you anymore. For a long moment, no one moved. The air felt like a glass dome about to crack. From Dad's phone, the sound of a baseball announcer cut through the tension. The Bengals lost again. Defense fell apart in the final minute. Dad muttered, "Story of the season." I exhaled slowly. Story of my life. I opened the front door. I think it's time for you to go. They didn't move at first. They watched me, waiting for the old May, the one who would apologize, smooth things over, take responsibility. But she wasn't there anymore. Sloane grabbed her daughter's hands. You'll regret this, she spat. Maybe, I said, but if I do, it'll be my regret, not yours. Mom lingered in the doorway, eyes full of something between rage and heartbreak. One day you'll understand what it means to be a mother. Maybe, I said, and when I do, I hope I raise my children to see the worth in both of them. Dad walked out silently, murmuring, Let's just go, Ev. The door closed behind them with the same soft click as yesterday. Mocha padded over, tail wagging uncertainly. I knelt, burying my face in her fur as my hands trembled. Not with fear, this time with release. For years, I thought I was fragile because I stayed quiet. But the truth was this. Quiet people aren't weak. Quiet people are observant. Quiet people endure. And when they finally speak, they speak with the force of every unspoken pain. That night, I lay awake in the dark, listening to the soft breath of my dog curled beside me. I thought it was over, that they'd fly home and let me breathe. But the universe doesn't give clean endings. 2 days later, the emails began. Mom's subject line, Please talk to us. Sloane's message, You made your point. Are you happy now? Dad's voicemail, Call your mother. I didn't reply. And that silence, my silence, was louder than anything I could have said. The emails started quietly, as if my family believed softness could undo the truth. The first came from Mom. The subject line read, Please talk to us. She wrote about forgiveness, about how families shouldn't hold grudges, about how she'd barely slept since our misunderstanding. She mentioned the girls missing me, slipped in a line about what families should do in hard times. I read it once, then closed it. 2 hours later, Sloane's message appeared, no greeting. You've made your point. The boutique is shutting down. Mom and Dad might lose part of their savings because of me. Is this what you wanted? Are you happy? I hovered over the reply button for a second. Then I shut my phone off. Silence was becoming my fluency, and they hated it. For the next week, every morning started the same. Coffee steaming on the windowsill, sunlight pooling across the hardwood floor, mocha curled into a warm ball at my feet. And every morning, another attempt landed in my inbox. An apology, a guilt trip, a reminder, a threat dressed as sentiment. I read none of them twice. Instead, I poured myself into work. And work, for once, gave back more than it took. 3 days after the emails began, my manager, Emma, appeared in my doorway carrying a folder and wearing the kind of smile people save for real victories. Got a minute? I nodded. She sat across from me, eyes bright. Corporate approved the promotion. You're officially our new regional director. The words didn't feel like fireworks. They felt like quiet validation. Solid, earned, undeniable. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I just exhaled, steady and grounded. Congratulations, May, she said. Thank you, I replied, and meant it. That night, I drove straight to Evan's. Mocha and Benji tumbled across the floor the moment I opened the door, barking like they were celebrating too. Evan was in the kitchen, sleeves pushed up, chopping vegetables with lazy precision. You look lighter, he said, glancing at me. I got promoted, I said. He set the knife down, crossed the room in 2 strides, and wrapped me in a hug that felt like coming up for air. "That's incredible. I'm so proud of you." His voice held no envy, no doubt, no hidden angle, just pride, warm, honest pride. We ate dinner on his porch. The dogs curled at our feet. The air smelled like mint from the planter he kept by the railing. Somewhere down the street, wind chimes clinked in the warm night breeze. I told him about the emails, the messages, the guilt they were trying to resurrect. "What are you going to do?" he asked quietly. I watched Mocha twitch in her sleep, small paws running through dreams. "I already did it," I said. "I stopped answering." He nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Silence can be the loudest no. I leaned my head on his shoulder. I'm finally learning that. For the first time in my life, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt like space. It felt like breath. It felt like mine. Days passed, then almost a week. One morning, as I stirred cream into my coffee, my phone buzzed again. Another email from Mom. I almost ignored it on reflex, but something about the subject line made me pause. "Dad says the Bengals won this time." I opened it. Defense held strong. Maybe there's hope after all. I stared at the screen for a long moment. The words weren't manipulative. They weren't guilt-laced. They were simple, almost human. For the first time in years, I smiled at one of her messages. I typed back a single line. "Exactly, Mom. Defense makes all the difference." I hit send. The moment the email left my outbox, thunder rolled somewhere in the distance, low and steady. A storm was coming, but it didn't unsettle me. It felt like applause. I looked around my apartment, my furniture, my rug, my books, my life. Mocha hopped into my lap, stretching out like she owned the place. Maybe she did. Maybe we both did. I wasn't who I used to be. I wasn't the invisible daughter. I wasn't the helper or the peacekeeper. I wasn't the emotional sponge, soaked with everyone else's mess. I was someone who learned to walk away, someone who learned that leaving isn't cruelty, it's clarity, someone who built a life worth protecting. And maybe one day, my family would understand that. But even if they didn't, I would be okay. Because distance isn't abandonment. Distance is defense. And defense, I had learned, is what keeps you standing. If you've ever been the quiet one, the useful one, the forgotten one, the daughter who becomes the family cushion until she finally collapses, this truth is yours too. You don't owe people your peace just because they gave you your name. The storm outside cracked open the sky, a flash of silver. Mocha curled into my lap, trembling slightly. I stroked her fur and whispered, "We're okay." And for the first time in my life, it was true.